Hi guys, it's me again, and we're on the second of today's videos, which is Cuba. As the first European to reach Cuba was the aforementioned Christopher Columbus in 1492. And at the time, the indigenous people lived by farming, as they grew cassava, maize and yams, as they also smoked tobacco. And in 1511, Diego Velázquez conquered the island of Cuba, and he founded several settlements, including Havana, as the natives were kind of devastated by the European diseases that the settlers brought with them, as they had no resistance to them. And from 1526, the Spanish imported African slaves into Cuba, and by the late 18th century, Cuba was prospering by growing and exporting sugar, as the plantations were worked by enormous amounts of slaves. However, in the 19th century, there was increasing movement for independence, and the struggle for Cuban independence began in 1868 when the landowner named Carlos Manuel de Cespedes freed his slaves, which began the 10-Year War. And it ended in failure in 1878, as in 1886 slavery in Cuba was finally abolished. As the Second War of Independence began in 1895, and in 1898 the USA went to war with Spain as US forces invaded Cuba, and Spain surrendered shortly after, as a peace treaty made Spain relinquish all claims to Cuba. However, afterwards, it wasn't all plain sailing, as Cuba was occupied by US forces for 4 years, as they left in 1902, and Cuba became nominally independent, but in reality was still dominated by the US. And in the 20th century, most people in Cuba remained very poor, despite efforts to modernize the country, and in 1924, Gerardo Machado was elected president of Cuba, as the Constitution barred him for more than one term, but when his term ended in 1928, Machado held on to power. However, Machado was overthrown by 1933 in a period of unrest, as Cuba gained a new and democratic constitution as elections were held, as in 1952 for Franco Batista staged a coup and became dictator. And at the time, compared to other Latin American countries, Cuba was seen as prosperous, and people had a very high standard of living, as literacy rates were high and healthcare was relatively good. As education in Cuba was of a high standard, as Cuba was known for their writers. But it all kind of changed in 1959 when Fidel Castro led a revolution in Cuba, as it didn't exactly seem as bringing freedom to Cuba, as he made himself dictator, as he introduced a repressive communist regime, and independent labor unions were made illegal. No political dissidents were crushed, but the lessons of history is that socialism doesn't always work, kind of thing. As the Cuban economy stagnated during the 60s and 70s, meanwhile Cuba became a satellite for the Soviet Union, and many people fled from communism, as many escaped to the USA, and many more died trying, as they died drowning trying to cross the sea. While the relations with the US deteriorated, in 1961, 1,400 Cuban emigres trained by the CIA were sent to invade Cuba in a Bay of Pigs, but the invasion ended in total failure. In 1962, the USA imposed a blockade on Cuba. Furthermore, Cuba was economically dependent on the USSR, and when the Soviet Union broke up in 1992, the situation in communist Cuba became desperate, as living conditions for the average Cuban became worse, as he suffered through shortages of food, as Castro was forced to allow some free enterprise, as he also opened Cuba up to tourism. while in 2008 Fidel Castro resigned, as in 1998 the Pope visited Cuba for the first time, and today Cuba is still a dictatorship, even though I haven't exactly heard much since Fidel Castro died, like going on like 3 years ago, something like that now. But in 2014 the USA and Cuba normalised relationships, as the population is about 11 million. As then there's also a nice little legend for us. The Necropolis de Colón, also known as Colón Cemetery, is the most important cemetery in Cuba, and the popular legend of La Milagrosa attracts many visitors among those who live locally and those who may come from abroad, who visit the tomb of Emilia Gori de la Hoz for praying and wish for a healthy life and be their beloved ones, inspired by a story of love and faith, as the tomb is most visited at the Colón Cemetery. As Emilia used to be a high society woman who lived in Havana at the Palace of Marqués. In her childhood, she used to play with a cousin, Jose Vincent Adio y Rafael, who would later become a loving husband. As Emilia's family used to post kind of like engagement, because Jose used to belong to the middle class, as he leaves Havana for a while, joining the war for Cuban independence. But Emilia's sister, who is marrying a count, intervenes, making it possible for Emilia to marry Jose Vicente on the same day. So her family authorized a marriage with Jose, which is said to have happened on the 25th of June 1900, as Emilia Gori passed away a year later, on the 3rd of May 1901, as she died of pre-eclampsia while extracting a child who died during the pregnancy. There was no cesarean at the time, and as was tradition, she was buried together with the baby, put in the middle of her legs in the tomb of Jose's friend, as the sculpture over the tomb was a gift of another friend of him. As a Cuban sculptor, Jose Velata de Saavedra, as the sculpture of Emilia is a life-size sculpture, sculpted in Italy on a Carrara white marble, transported to Havana in 1909, as the image holds the baby in one hand and a Latin cross in the other, referring to her day's death as the 3rd of May, which is the day of the Holy Cross. As her husband Jose Vincent Adot Yahel, he was a visitor to him every day for the next 40 years until he died. In a ritual, he used to knock on her grave 3 times to wake her, talking to her while keeping his hands over the grave. And when his father died in 1914, Jose decided to bury him with Emilia, and when he exhumed her tomb, he was surprised to see the baby's mummified after 13 years, claiming loudly to be the miracle, as the baby was found on her breast instead of between her legs. As Emilia's tomb has become a place of peregrination since this occasion, one of the most revered sites in Cuba. And from this moment on, the tomb started to be visited daily by people praying for their wishes, and so also visiting her tomb every day and his rituals to talk to her. In addition to the miracle, it became a popular legend over the country, as you can still visit the tomb walking from outside or somewhere up to arrive and ask her to concede your wishes to come true. Share this as a Cuba for you, and that's a lovely little legend for you to end on, so bye for now.